Look, between Frankenstein and The Running Man out now, and also Hamnet coming soon, and that Wuthering Heights trailer that just dropped, there are a lot of books that are being turned into movies right now, I feel like more than usual. So today, I'd like to settle an age-old debate. If you know the movie's coming, should you read the book first? I'm Elamin Abdelmahmoud. This is Commotion. C.T. Jones is here, Jo Saul is here, and Bilge Eibiri is here. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Hi.
Welcome to the show. Listen, before I start, I just want to acknowledge that there is another important book story that just happened in this country, which is that Sovancom Tavonska just won the Giller Prize last night for her book Pick a Color. Congratulations to Sovancom. Also, someone should adapt that book because it takes place in one day in one location. Those are just movies that I gravitate to. I just wanted to sort of take a moment to acknowledge that. But you know what? That is not the conversation that we're going to have today because we are getting into something completely different. I'm going to start off by asking each one of you by saying, you know what? Hey, should you read it before you watch a debate? CT, I'm going to start with you. Tell me why you think it's important to read the book before watching the movie.
I'm absolutely happy to, Elamin. If you were invited to a stranger's birthday party, wouldn't you learn their name? They do. A couple things about them, the background, if you will. And adaptations, books are the source material. They're your entry point into the world, your entry point into the story. And before the action stars cast, the ingenues cast, the Oscar nominee is cast, there, even if it was an intern, there was someone reading the book, right? And reading the book before you go into the movie is like watching a director's cut with commentary, right? You know what's happening, and more important, you know how you feel about that story. So you can sit down and go, oh, I love this, I hate this, I don't know how I feel about this. It's perfect.
I love this analogy of, hey, you're going to the birthday party, and you should probably know the person a little bit before you show up. Bilge, you are a student of the moving image. That is the thing that you do, and you show up to you're movie critic. You show up and you go, hey, this is a movie. The movie wants to be a movie. Where do you stand on this?
So I feel very strongly that actually you should read the book after you see the movie.
Whoa.
And I know that that's like blasphemy. And I think most people probably wind up seeing the movie first and then reading the book because they found it interesting and they want to, they're curious about the book. And all these people feel deeply ashamed that they didn't read the book before seeing the movie. And I felt that way too. But over the years, I realized that whenever I read the book before seeing the movie, I was always distracted by all the changes that had been made to the story. And I know that, we know books and films, they're supposed to be separate works, but it was like, even though I understood that, it was like impossible for me not to be distracted by, oh, that's different. That character's not there. This story's, oh my God, they changed the ending. And it's kind of hampered my enjoyment of the movie. And in some ways, almost even retroactively hampered my enjoyment of the book as well. And then I realized whenever I read the book after seeing the movie, I enjoyed both book and movie so much more.
Yeah, I take your point about that idea. Like if I end up reading the book before I go see the movie, there's something inside my brain that is happening where I go, well, I'm an editor too, and you made different editorial choices than the ones that I would have made. And for me, I sort of, I end up making those cuts as I go along. And maybe that's not the most ideal way to meet a movie on its terms. Jo, you're the co-owner of Type Books, which is an independent bookstore here in Toronto. You read a lot. What's your take on this? Do you have to read a book before you go see the movie?
Oh boy, I feel like I have to be a tiebreaker here, and I don't know if I can. So I hear both sides. I'm going to take a middle route here.
Jo.
I am. I think that obviously as a bookseller, I'm going to recommend reading the book first. Come and buy the book and read it before you go to the movies. But actually, one of our best-selling events at our store here in Toronto is this thing we do at the Paradise Theatre, and it's an adaptation book club. And so we do sell the books in advance, and we say, hey, come and buy your book for sure. But we also say, if you didn't buy the book, if you didn't read the book, show up anyway, see the film, and talk to us about the art of adaptation. So we have books on sale, we see the film, and we also have a conversation about what's at stake, what happens when you're adapting a book to a film.
Yeah, I think that this idea of like there's something at stake is important because people get really invested in a book, especially if a book, sort of emotionally connects with them. And to that end, the example that's about to get to be everywhere is Hamnet, which you brought your copy of Hamnet. I can see that right in front of you, Jo.
Yes, I take it everywhere.
That movie's about to come out at the end of this month. The movie's directed by Chloe Zhao. It's a movie about William Shakespeare's son who died, and the book, Maggie O'Farrell's book, is a sort of a fictionalized account of that. And then now that's being made into a movie. You saw the movie at TIFF a couple of months ago.
I did.
What was that experience like? Would that have changed? How would that have changed if you hadn't read the book first?
Okay, so two things. The experience of seeing this movie at TIFF was unbelievable. It was absolutely beautiful. It was this communal experience. I mean, it was a packed house. The director was there. The actors were there. Actually, the director led us through a communal breathing exercise in advance of the movie. It was stunning. I mean, visually, it was incredible. The acting was shockingly good. The music, the soundtrack, I loved it all. I still think I'm just so glad I read the book before I saw the movie. I mean, and it depends too. Like, this is an incredibly literary book, and this is a book that you just kind of dive into. The writing is so stunning, and when you're reading, I really do think that reading is this act of co-creation in a way. Like, you go in and you're imagining these worlds, you're imagining these people, you're imagining your own version in conversation, obviously, with the author's version. And what the director of this film is doing is the same thing, but it's her version, and that's different from my version. Did I like it? Was I blown away from it? By it? Absolutely. I highly recommend seeing the film, but I'm really glad I went in having read it myself first and had my own kind of version of it going into it. And also it prepared me for the intense sadness of it. I felt like I was wearing a bit of armor because I knew just how sad it was going to get. And I was worried for the people around me who may not have known that.
I was going to say, when you mentioned Chloe Zhao, led everybody through a breathing exercise, it's because this is a movie about grief, about a family that is sort of racked with grief. It imagines the real life story of Shakespeare, William Shakespeare losing his son, and how that might have informed the writing of Hamlet. And Maggie O'Farrell sort of does the thing where she inhabits that moment literarily, like she sort of builds the character of William Shakespeare and imagines that grief. And then all the accounts, Bilge, that I've seen of people who have seen Hamnet are like, no one is ready for this movie. Like, no one is ready for the intensity of the grief that you're going to experience as you watch Paul Mescal and Jessie Buckley sort of take on the story of William Shakespeare in this moment. How did you approach Hamnet, Bilge?
So Hamnet was a case where I had read the novel before I saw the movie. I read the novel a couple of years ago, and I don't even remember if I knew there was a movie coming of it. I read the novel because I love Shakespeare, and Hamlet is like my favorite play of all time, and it just seemed right up my alley. And I love the novel. I mean, I think it's an incredible novel, beautifully written, and I love the film. I mean, I've seen the film 3 times now, and it's extraordinary. Wow. I mean, reduces me to a total puddle of tears every single time I watch it. So that's a case where I do read books, and sometimes they are turned into movies. So and I don't know what it would be like to read that book after seeing the movie. I imagine it's still really powerful because the book and movie are not the same. I mean, Maggie O'Farrell actually, collaborated on the adaptation. So, it's not like a total upending, but they are structurally quite different. So, I mean, I feel like you probably can't go wrong reading Hamnet in any circumstance. Even if you don't like the movie, you should read the book.
Okay, so that's not your usual way. Usually you sort of would watch a movie, and then after that you'd read the book. In this particular case, because you'd already read the book, did watching the movie kind of suffer in any kind of way because you'd read the book first?
No, it didn't. And in fact, this was a case where I found myself really appreciating the changes from the book to the film, because the book kind of ends right with, like, sort of that spoiler alert, right as she sort of sees Hamlet the play, the book just ends. And the film gets more into the actual experience of watching the play and also the experience of creating the play. So it has a kind of bifurcated structure in that way. Yeah.
I was going to say, like, CT, I feel like every year there's 1 or 2 movies sort of in the Oscar run, shall we say, that are sort of adapted from a significant book. That's not unusual, but it feels like there's a lot of book adaptations that are just out right now. I mean, we talked about
Absolutely.
Frankenstein. Wicked for Good is about to come out. The Running Man, Regretting You. Why are so many books being turned into movies right now? What's happening with the industry that is, the people are turning to this direction?
Yeah, IP sells. I think one of the things we see in the movie industry in the past couple of years
Yeah.
is that studios are obsessed with debuts and opening weekends, and they just have an innate way of like being less trusting about original ideas and in many cases the untested creatives that come with them. Books are also what I like to call secret IP. I mean, the books that we're talking about right now, right? Frankenstein, Wicked for Good. People know that these books exist.
Yeah.
I talked to so many people who did not know The Running Man was a book,
Yeah.
right?
Stephen King novel under
Yes.
his pen name, Richard Bachman.
Yes,
Yes.
and published a very long time ago. So that's what I like, why I like to call them secret IP, because in a lot of places you get that existing kind of fandom and you get a new fandom and you don't really have to market to the existing one. You know that if they're excited about it, they'll come.
Bilge, I will say that, like, out of all the existing IP sort of recreations, I don't mind this particular bend. I don't mind the idea of, like, at least a bunch of interested, independent filmmakers saying, let me find a book that I really care about and sort of as faithfully as possible try to adapt this thing. But what does it tell you about the film business at the moment that we're seeing a lot more book adaptations than normal?
Well, CT got into it in terms of just the obsession with IP that's in Hollywood, and I agree. I mean, I book adaptations are kind of the good version of IP.
Yeah.
At the same time, though, if you think about it, I mean, it still speaks to a fundamental cowardice in Hollywood, I think, among execs. I mean, the thing they always say is, it's harder to get fired if a movie flops and you can say, but everybody read the book. It's based on this popular thing, or everybody saw the original movie. It's based on this other thing.
Yeah.
And it's easier, I suppose, to get fired if the movie flops and you were basically the only person that championed it or knew about it. So that's, I mean, it's kind of, it's like the Larry David meme of kind of like, yes, it's great that they're adapting books, but the reason they're adapting books isn't because they love books. It's because they're like afraid to do anything original.
But also, I mean, like, you take a book like Frankenstein and you put Jacob Elordi in it and I'm seated. You take a book like Wuthering Heights and you put Jacob Elordi in it and I'm seated, and I'm wondering if I'm seated because of Jacob Elordi or if I'm seated because of the book adaptations. But either way, I'm more invested. I'm invested because I know that story and I'm interested in sort of seeing a new take to it. But also, I should say, Joe, there's something that happens to book sales when a movie adaptation comes out, especially when they sometimes introduce the new cover with the stars of that, and they did that with a new version of Wuthering Heights just recently.
Yeah, they did. So, I mean, adaptations are good for book sales for sure. And I think publishers know that. And I think that they can actually, something like Frankenstein, which is in the public domain, I mean, we can then bring out how many different editions of Frankenstein and with what, this introduction and that introduction and this cover treatment. And we sell them. I mean, Jacob Elordi sells books. There you go. He does. And Paul Mescal and Jesse Buckley. I mean, they sell books. So it's interesting in terms of the Hamnet example, because we generally don't sell the movie tie-in editions. We kind of are like, no, we like the classic editions. We're going to stay with the classic editions. But I was sort of told, hey, just try the movie tie-in edition of Hamnet, see what happens. So now I'm stacking the classic edition, and today actually is the pub date for the movie tie-in edition. So I'll have to check back with you and tell you what happens. But I have a stack of each side by side, and it'll be interesting to see what sells faster.
Bilge, what I'm interested in is like the difference between a book, shall we say, that is sort of all covered in deep interiority and a book that is sort of all plot that is unfolding in front of you. And let me take Martin Scorsese as an example of this, right? I think he's someone who's adapted a bunch of books that are like truly just all plot. And the plot is riveting and it is driving, the action is just kind of being driven forward. And kind of later in his career, he's turned to some of these books that are so deeply interior. I'm thinking here of Silence, for example, as like one of those things that was like, oh, this is an interior work. And it's actually really hard to sort of bring this to the screen because it's going to be a lot of meditative shots of the water hitting the rocks and Andrew Garfield looking kind of sad and into the distance. there is something that happens when we know that the book is kind of propulsive and all action. And you go, oh, I can't wait to see this brought to the screen. But when you think about books that are sort of largely interiority, do you ever worry and go, boy, I don't know how they're going to get this one right, because it's all sort of the internal worlds of these characters? Because like that's when I worry the most. Like those are the moments when I go, I don't know how you're going to bring that to life. I am a little bit concerned. I love that book, but also it's because I was living inside a character's head.
You worry about it less if it's Martin Scorsese
That's
doing
true.
it.
That's true. That's a good point.
Right. And very often those adaptations are made by filmmakers who have a bit more, let's say, skill and artistry.
Yeah.
I mean, a great example, actually, counterexample maybe, is the various adaptations that have happened of Camus' The Stranger over the years. I mean, there have been several, and Lucchino Visconti made a really good one. I really like, with Marcello Mastroianni back in the '60s, but that's a challenging novel, but it's also such a popular novel that's like the people are like drawn to it with a siren call.
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh my God, how the hell do I do this? There was an adaptation of it at Venice this year that people liked. I actually didn't get a chance to see it, but there are some iconic works of literature that are like almost, you can never make anybody happy with an adaptation.
Well, and that's exactly it. Is like there's when a book is more literary, shall we say? I think there's a bit of more intensity in terms of, hey, I like that book. Don't mess with that book.
Agreed.
The thing that the book is trying to do is really ambitious, actually, and it's not just serving you continuous plot. It's trying to do a lot of things internally. Do you have the same worry? Do you kind of go, I don't know how they're going to do this?
Well, I think I would have that worry about Hamnet, actually. I mean, it is one of those most powerful novels about grief and mourning, and sort of how that can be a very personal and very isolating experience. And so there is a lot of interiority in that book, in that novel. And I think what happens is Jessie Buckley's face is what happens, because I think that is what happens, is that, we then rely on, the cinematography and, her link to the land and that kind of thing, but also the music absolutely makes a huge difference. But the final scene in that film, her face is a map of her grief and a map of her cathartic release of that grief. And we watch that, and I could watch that all day.
That's the thing you're describing, though, is like needing to be what Bilge talked about, is in the hands of an expert filmmaker who can go.
I think so.
The face needs to actually do most of the talking. My name is Elamin Abdelmahmoud. This show is called Commotion. Bilge Eibiri is here, and C.T. Jones is here, and Jo Saul is here, and we're talking about the delicate art, of adapting books into movies, because we're in this moment where a lot of books are being turned into movies. And I want to take a little detour, actually, Bilge, if you don't mind. Here's what I want to do. I want to read you the speech that the Pope recently made, and I'm interested in this Pope and his relationship to cinema. And here's the stuff that he said. So he gave this speech about the power of cinema to actors and directors, to all kinds of people in the film business who are gathered in Rome. So you have to imagine the Pope delivering this in front of Spike Lee, that's exactly what happened. Here's what he said. He said, "The logic of algorithms tend to repeat what works, but art opens up what is possible." And then he went on to say, "When cinema is authentic, it does not merely console, but challenges. It articulates the questions that dwell within us, and sometimes even provokes tears that we did not know we needed to express." One, I need the Pope to write a novel. Number two, Bilge, how does that resonate for you in terms of the context of this conversation we're having?
Well, it definitely resonates, and all I can think is, I am not a religious man, but I am all in on the Pope right now. It's. I mean, I was looking at the stuff that he was saying, and I was like, has this man been reading my articles? Like this, it's. It's so wonderful to have a Pope that's actually articulating stuff like this, which when we film critics talk about this kind of stuff, people look at us like we've grown a second head and we're a bunch of weirdos. And I'm like, look, listen to the Pope saying it too. And it really speaks to this notion of discovery, right? I mean, one of the worst things about the kind of IP craze, and also kind of the way algorithms just feed us more of the same, is that we can't discover things anymore. This is why I love bookstores. I love walking around bookstores and just picking up random books. I always make a point of, at least a few times a year going to a bookstore and just buying a book I've never heard of before. And because that's how you discover things, and now we don't discover things anymore. We're just kind of being fed more of the stuff we like, which is nice, but actually, as the Pope says, art's supposed to challenge us, right?
I gotta say, CT, like I was not expecting the Pope to be the source of. I really, truly wasn't expecting the Pope to be the source of someone saying like, have we gone too far down this IP road? But there is something about the way that he phrased this idea of discovery, and actually, like the very important thing of art is not supposed to just console you. It's supposed to do many other things at the same time. Sometimes challenge and provoke you. And then I think about the amount of IP I've been fed that is like, I will sit in a movie and it's going to be okay at the end of it. More than likely, Spider-Man is not going to die, nor is he actually going to have to like endure that greatest sacrifice at the end of this thing. And Bilge will write an article about it, and then he'll get booed around town, but I'll have a great time. But then there's something about the Pope's articulation of the thing that we're looking for when we go to the movies that seems to have resonated with a lot of people. Was that a surprise to you?
No, not at all. I think even if people don't understand the IP battle currently going on in Hollywood right now, they know that they're tired. There's a reason why we've seen the Marvel slump. Even if people can't articulate it, they know they're like, something's going on here. I need something new. Does it feel like we're watching the same thing? And so I always find it that's why I find it so lovely when you see an adaptation that manages to do its own thing. Because even if it is based off of IP, you get to see, I mean, Joe, you said it perfectly. This is Chloe Zhao's interpretation of this book. And I love it so, so, so much. And I would say to everyone, if you see a book that's going to be turned into a movie, pick it up, open it, see what's going on.
Get in there. Joe, I'll put this to you because the thing that Bilge said about discovery is a thing that I feel. The reason I go to bookstores is because I want a space where I don't know what I want. I want to be open to the idea that I'm not entirely the most, certain person about the thing that I want. And something about the space is going to tell me, hey, you actually might be interested in this, even though you've never really thought about it. And that's what bookstores do for me personally. So talk a little bit about that Pope quote in that context.
Well, I love that Pope quote, both in the context of the bookstore, which thank you for saying that, Bilge, because that's what we try to do is surprise and delight and make you find something that you might not have been looking for. But I also love that Pope quote in the context of Hamnet and the movie, and it takes me back to Chloe Zhao's, making us all sit together and take 3 deep breaths together and kind of enter the experience of that film together, knowing that we will be changed. Like something will happen in that experience, and let's do that together as a kind of communal action. It was a really beautiful thing, and I think it relates to what he's saying there.
What I appreciate about this conversation is that it was really meant to be a conversation about book adaptations into movies, and it's really just a Hamnet conversation. Everyone should just be reading and watching Hamnet, and I appreciate that. Aside from Hamnet, though, I just want to end the show with recommendations from each of you, which is something that we should all see, or maybe a book that we should all read that's adapted from a book. Maybe your favorite book adapted into a movie. 30 seconds to each of you. Bilge, I'll start with you, pal. What do you got?
Oh God, some of my favorite films are adaptations of books like, Stanley Kubrick's Barry Lyndon or Luchino Visconti's The Leopard or Bertolucci's The Conformist. But the movie from this year that I'm fascinated by is Train Dreams, Clint Bentley's Train Dreams, which is in
great
theaters
book.
now.
I haven't seen the movie, but great book.
And I haven't read the book. The novella, I bought it as soon as I saw the movie. I've seen the movie like 4 times, and my experience of the movie is so kind of strong and vivid in my mind that I'm like afraid to touch the novella. Like it's sitting there, and it's like it would take. I mean, it's short. It would take like a couple of hours
I was going
to
to say
read.
2 hours. It's a very tiny book. Yes.
Yeah, and I am terrified of reading it right now.
I absolutely love that. CT, 30 seconds to you, pal. What do you got?
Okay, if you're a TV person, Station 11 is one of the greatest book to project adaptations I've ever seen in my entire life. If you're a movie person, The Perks of Being a Wallflower, which technically is really a staple for more my generation, but I always suggest that everyone reads it and watches the film. And then I would say if there's a movie that you've seen that you want to read the book, Killers of the Flower Moon.
Yes, 100%. Okay, okay, Joe, last word to you, pal.
Okay, so I was going to say the most successful of our adaptation book club in the last year was The Virgin Suicide. So Jeffrey Eugenides' novel, Sophia Coppola, and it was filmed in Toronto. But I also want to shout out to Miriam Tave's Women Talking with Sarah Polly's
Incredible
film.
adaptation.
Stunning.
100%. Okay, that's a great place to leave it. I really appreciate your time. You guys have been wonderful. Thanks again. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
That's been Bilge Eibiri and C.T. Jones and Jo Saul. My name is Elamin Abdelmahmoud. This show is called Commotion. We're going to be back tomorrow. We would love to see you then. In the meantime, have a great day.